seeing who joins in here, and give you all a couple minutes to see the notification and figure out that I am live. So this is all new, and I see people showing up. Yay! Notifications are working. People are arriving. That is fantastic. So hopefully you can see me and hear me. And I will say check in with the chat. Click icon at bottom right. So that's how you get there. There's an icon on the bottom right that you'll use to get to the chat. And just let's make sure that we have people here. And but I can see who's here. I see lists of names, and this is great. But I want to make sure the chat's working. So yeah, just click the chat and do the thing. And especially if you can't hear me, please check in the chat. So far, I am not seeing chat messages, but I'm hoping that you can hear me. Yes, live, yes. So Sora, can you hear me? Can you hear me? All loud and clear. Perfect. Yes. All right, cool. So this is the new Circle live stream thing. We did a test of it earlier, and some of you were there for that, and they've worked out a lot of bugs. It's still in beta, but it's getting released for real next week. And so this is my first kind of real thing with it, and I'm really excited to try things here. Yeah, so let me start off with some music here. And okay, a bit stuttery when I'm playing music live. But that's not because of the new thing. That's not because of the new Circle thing. This is actually in part because I'm using Jack. Okay. So from my end, that was very, very glitchy, right? Okay, yeah, Peter not working on Chrome on Windows 8. And yeah, I remember we had some problems with certain combinations of browsers and operating systems last time as well. And unfortunately, I guess that's still going to be maybe a thing. All right, so I'm going to assume that the music that I just played was glitchy for you. It was glitchy for me too, but it works either if I'm doing the live stream or if I'm using Jack, not necessarily both at the same time. Not going to worry, because that was what I tried to show Wednesday. So I am going to now show you everything that I have going on here. So the first thing I have is Jack itself. So this is the Jack control window, and it's that program QJack control. So it's QJack CTL. That's the name of the program that gets installed when you install Jack. And when you install it and start it up, this is more or less what you see. So one thing I've discovered is that this button here that says graph, we're going to need that button in a second. That button may or may not display by default for all of you. So I'm going to go into this setup button here, and under MISC, there's this checkbox here that says replace connections with graph button. If you have that checkbox, check it if it's not checked already. If what you have instead is a connections button, that tells me you have an older version of Jack, and that'll still work. It'll just look a little different. I'm going to come back to this in a second, because in order to show you what I'm going to do with this, I need to show you QSynth also. So now I'm going to show you QSynth, and this is QSynth, and we saw that we just couldn't get it to work because I couldn't get Jack to start up on Wednesday. This is QSynth, and in QSynth, the thing that I needed to do was go to Setup and make sure that MIDI driver is set to Jack. And under Sound Fonts, you have to load something. So I clicked the Open button here, and I selected this one here, Fluid R3 GM. This is the sound font that MuseScore's sound font is based on. MuseScore's sound font took that one and then made modifications, customizations, replaced a few instruments with some better sounding ones, fixed a couple tuning issues, added a few other instruments here and there, and made it work with single note dynamics. But this is essentially the MuseScore sound font. If you've got other sound fonts you want to use somewhere, go for it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to this smaller sound font here. So the smaller sound font will play back less glitchily, I think. And that's going to be fine. It won't sound as cool, but it'll, I think, be a better experience for us. So this one that says default GM, this is actually, it looks like it's the same exact size as the TIM GM6MB. So I think it's the same exact sound font that MuseScore used to come with. Like MuseScore 1 came with this tiny sound font because we're really worried about the download size. So in fact, I'm just going to use that one. I'm going to use TIM just to make sure it's literally the same one. So I'm going to use TIM, that one, and I'm just going to delete or remove the default one. So TIM GM, this is now MuseScore 1's sound font. And yeah, if you have the MuseScore sound font, if you know how to find that on your system, or if you've downloaded it separately, you can use that. You can use any sound font that MuseScore can use, because we're both using the same thing under the hood. We're both using something called Fluid Synth. Fluid Synth is the built-in synthesizer in MuseScore. It's also the built-in synthesizer here in QSynth. So I'm telling it to use TIM 6 megabyte, whatever it is, TIM GM 6 megabytes or something. And when I switch sound fonts, it tells me it needs to restart. And I'm going to say yes. So it's going to restart. And now if I go to play music in MuseScore, I believe we'll hear nothing. We hear nothing because this is what I was trying to explain on Wednesday. MuseScore is putting information out there to Jack, and QSynth is sitting there listening for stuff, but they're not listening to each other. If you think about it like a telephone, I mean, I can place a call, someone else has got a telephone there, but unless I dial their phone number, it's not going to ring them, right? We both have phones. We're both connected to the same wireless network, or whatever it is, you know, the same cell network. But just because I talk into my phone doesn't mean the other person hears it. I have to call them first. I just made up that analogy. I like it. So here's how we're going to place the call. Not in QSynth, but in the Jack connection kit. So I'm going to go back to this background so we can see a little better. In Jack, I'm going to click that graph button. When I click that graph button, it's going to show a window, which I guess I'm already displaying somewhere else. Am I? Maybe I'm not. Let's try clicking it again. There we go. So if you're using the connections window instead of the graph window, if you didn't have that checkbox to check to say to use the graph button instead, you won't see a pretty picture like this. You'll just see a list. It's a uglier picture. This is a little more useful because I can drag things around. As you have more things we want to add, this can be really useful. So this here, where it says Fluid Synth MIDI, this is basically QSynth. It doesn't say QSynth, it says Fluid Synth, because that's what QSynth is, just a visible wrapper around Fluid Synth. Fluid Synth is the actual synthesizer. So what I need to do is make MuseScore call Fluid Synth. You ready for this? This is the world's simplest thing. Where it says MuseScore MIDI 1, drag it to Fluid Synth. Draws a line, done. The phone call has been placed. We will now have audio. And hopefully, because I'm using a lighter sound font, it'll be less glitchy. And if it's not, I apologize, but it will be less. It was less glitchy when I was testing it. Again, if I try testing it while I'm broadcasting, it's too much going on at once, I guess. There we go. That's not bad. So that's the sound font that MuseScore came with for MuseScore 1. So that's what we're going to use here. So yay, things are already off to a way, way better start. By the way, people, one thing that I've noticed here in this setup here, this Circle, Circle is the platform that the community is based on, if you didn't know. So this live stream running in the community is hosted there on Circle. It's all local to Circle. And the one glitch that it has that I remember we had in our test is sometimes you might have to scroll the chat window yourself. Like people, Joanne had said, I hear the sound. Brian said, definitely less glitchy. I didn't see either of those comments until I scrolled. Other people say you're seeing the new comments right away. But if it doesn't look like the chat is scrolling and it doesn't look like anyone's saying anything, try scrolling it yourself, and that might. Oh, what about VST? So here's the thing, Sora. VST is a different type of thing. It's similar to the idea of a sound font. Sound fonts are like recordings of individual instruments that, when you play them through a synthesizer, it plays back those sounds. And that's what VSTs are also. But VSTs are much more sophisticated than sound fonts. So you can do things with VSTs that sound fonts can't do. Fluid Synth does sound fonts. Fluid Synth does not do VSTs. So MuseScore 4 will have direct VST support, so you will be able to load VST instruments directly into MuseScore for MuseScore 4. That's what I hear. Haven't seen it yet. But if you want to use a VST with MuseScore now, you can, but not through QSynth or through MuseScore directly. You would still use Jack to set this up, but then you would load a digital audio workstation. And the one that I have installed is called Ardour, A-R-D-O-U-R, kind of I don't know, seems British, just the O-U-R. So Ardour is a digital audio workstation, or digital audio workstation, D-A-W. Some people pronounce it DAW. Some people find that's awkward and just say D-A-W, whatever. But Ardour is a digital audio workstation, meaning it can handle audio as well as MIDI. And when it does MIDI, it can do fancy things like load VST instruments, so that you can do that same process. You load Ardour up, and then you use QJack controller to make the phone call, to draw a line from MuseScore into Ardour. And then you'll have Ardour playing back your music instead of QSynth. But how to set up Ardour to use VSTs, that's over my head. No idea. I barely am able to get it to do Fluid Synth stuff, but I have no idea how to work VSTs. I just haven't explored that world at all. I will when MuseScore 4 comes out. I'll learn about VSTs so I can show you all stuff about it. But at least for now, I have, and it doesn't have to be Ardour, by the way. Any digital audio workstation will work. Pro Tools, Cubase, lots of them out there. Ableton is, in that category also. There was a discussion of which one to use. So Pro Tools is the one that most recording studios use. So if you go to an actual recording studio where they have a big, giant mixing board, it's usually hardwired to the computer running Pro Tools. So that's still the case. I mean, yes, there's some that use Cubase. There's a few that use Ableton, probably. I don't even know what else. I've seen people use other things, but Pro Tools definitely owns the recording studio market. But if you're not trying to run a recording studio or get a job in someone else's recording studio, there's no reason you need Pro Tools, right? It's overkill for most people's purposes. Cubase does fine. Cakewalk does fine. That's another one. And Ardour does fine for most people's needs, even if it's not what they're using in an actual professional recording studio. So let me now do the magic here. So far you've seen, oh, well, let me show you a little bit of magic here, because I can show you some magic right away. I'm going to start that music theme, the MuseScore theme again, and we're going to watch the Q Jack controller. The numbers, that's showing the time. And if I stop it here, still glitchy, right? It stopped here. If I rewind here and then hit play again, MuseScore starts over again. This is not MuseScore's play button. This is QJack controller's play button. And yeah, glitchy as heck. If I pause it and then restart it, it starts where I left off. Right? Pause. The numbers stop. Hit play. The numbers keep going. It's like one. You can kind of tell what's going on my system, right? It's overloaded, too much going on at once. But the longer MuseScore gets to run, the more it starts to kind of take over the system and play more smoothly. It's right after I've been juggling a lot of things that things are slow while I'm doing the live stream. So that's something to know. But so we're seeing that MuseScore is synchronized with this. In other words, if I click a note here and then look, and then I just press play here, you see that number now says 24. That's 24 seconds in. This is hours, minutes, seconds. Hours, minutes, seconds. The last number there is frames. No, I guess it's thousandths of a second. Because if it was frames, I forget. Well, because if it was frames, video frames are like usually 30 per second or 60 per second. And that number there, 840, is way bigger than either 30 or 60. So I guess this is thousandths of a second is all I can guess. But this way you can jump to any spot in your music, press play for a moment, and then hop back over here and find out, oh, that was 42 seconds in. So we are seeing the synchronization happening here, even without having. So hopefully, when you say crashes, you don't mean that something is actually crashing. You just mean that my video is, or that my audio is glitchy. Hopefully, things are actually working okay. Other than that, I still see myself here. I see my internet connection is unstable, and that should never be, because I am sitting here like 5 feet from my router. And let me just check over here for a second. Internet connection. I just want to make sure that my other computer here that I'm monitoring things on has a good internet connection. So yeah, hopefully I've got a good enough internet connection that that's not an issue. Okay, so milliseconds, not frames. Thanks, Brian. Thank you, Brian. Okay, so you've now seen that MuseScore is synchronizing with Jack. As it plays, that Jack controller is showing exactly where we are. This means now if we have a video player that can also synchronize, that means as MuseScore plays, the video will play. When we stop MuseScore, the video will stop, and so forth. So let's do it. I have this thing called XJDO, which I told you about. And if I load up XJDO here, it displays. And I've now learned the shortcuts to make the window a little bit bigger. And now I can open my file, and I created this really not very interesting video, and it's this one here. It's called videofrommusic.avi. And I'm telling you this because I want to tell you something about what kind of video this should be to work well. Videofrommusic.avi. So unfortunately, you would like to think that AVI is like a format, and that I'm going to tell you, oh, make sure it's an AVI format video. Video isn't that simple. extensions on the video don't mean what you want it to mean. What we need here isn't really about whether it ends in .avi or some other type of file. It has to do with the internals of the file. XJDO works best with a certain type. So I don't remember the name of the dang thing, so I'm going to look it up real quick for you. XJDO, and it was XJDO. Cannot reliably sync to target frame. This was the error message that I kept getting when I was testing this, and when I looked it up, I found information on that. So keyframe. So what it tells you is highly recommended to transcode. I'm just going to post you this link here and put this into the chat. Now, by the way, I'm going to tell you right now, if you click that link, it might take you outside of this window and you might lose this. You have to be careful not to have two windows open, both doing this. Well, actually, it won't matter because you guys aren't on microphone right now. I might invite someone up later just to check that out. There are two of me. That's a good point. There are two of me because it's not because of the screen share, actually. It's because I'm trying to monitor the chat on another computer. So I think I will just leave that because I don't want that to be the source of any problems. That would make my internet connection slower. I'm just going to close this window. There we go. So I'm still here. I don't think that's not affecting the speed of this computer. That was a different computer, but it does affect my internet speed if I've got two trying to connect at once. So yeah, that's a good call. It can't hurt. So you can choose between frames and seconds in Jack. Oh, that's great. That's good to know. So those of you who know a thing or two about this, I'm going to bring you on after I show the video connection, and so we can talk a little bit, and we'll get to test the bringing on guests if people want to come up. But okay, so here's XJDO. XJDO is now showing my video. So I posted the link. The reason I posted that link is there's a statement in here, right here. It is highly recommended to transcode the video file using a codec where every frame is a keyframe. And yeah, that's what they tell you. Now, this is gobbledygook to me. I don't know video. I kind of have a vague notion of what they probably mean by a keyframe, but what I eventually found was instructions on how to do that, how to run a particular command on Linux to get my video into that format. But I don't know how else to do that. In other words, other than using this particular Linux command, I don't know how to make sense out of that gobbledygook. So that's still something to figure out. Now, it's not that it won't work otherwise, but the video ends up being stuttery. What happens is the video can only synchronize like every second. So you'll see like a little bit of video and then black screen, then a little bit of video, then black screen, then more video, then black screen. And it's very stuttery if you don't have this special type of video. So people who know about that, I'd love to hear from you also. Yes, and it does make the file large, but it makes XJDO go smoother. So then here's the other thing that I will say. Remember on Wednesday, I talked about spotting, going through a movie and figuring out where the cues are, where the sections are that actually want music. Well, maybe what we do is we clip out just that part of the video and say, okay, I'm going to make a 37-second chunk of video and save just that in this format. And yes, it'll be a big file, but when you're done with it, then you can delete that file and go back to a different version of it. So you don't have to do the whole movie, and you certainly don't have to do it all at once. So in any case, this particular movie is not very big, but you'll notice something. Well, you don't notice because you don't know this movie, but I'm going to make it a little bigger, and I'm also going to use, and it's greater than sign makes it bigger. less than sign makes it smaller. Isn't that nice? And then comma kind of trims out the black borders there. It trims the window. So now this scene in the movie here, this isn't the beginning of the movie. It didn't load starting at the beginning of the movie. It started 42 seconds into the movie. What we'll now see is if I start MuseScore's playback, it's just going to start playing. Let me just do that. And go back to the movie. Movie's playing. Oh, that was the end of the movie, the end of the music. Let's go back to the beginning of the playback. Start it over again. So obviously the music is still going to be glitchy, and we'll just live with that for now. Again, it's not like this while I'm not broadcasting. It actually, but you can see the synchronization is perfect. Well, I don't know if you know it's perfect, but it's pretty darn good. As I'm stopping here, if I rewind and play that measure again. Oh, can I rewind a little bit from, I can do that from here. I think I can't rewind. Oh yeah, look at that. It rewinds like a second or two at a time, exactly a second at a time. So, and look at that. Look at that. The movie's backing up and MuseScore's backing up at the same time. Isn't that just lovely? As the music plays, I can back up more, keep backing up, and see exactly what's happening. This synchronization is cool. It is really cool. If I pick a spot, I think you can also make this window be always on top, except I think that might window on top. It says if I press, is that an A? I don't know that that really works on my system, but let's find out. Yeah, I think it doesn't work on my system. Yeah. But, you know, that's okay. So we got the synchronization going. I mean, how cool is this? So now as you're playing your music, you can be seeing how it lines up with your video. Or as you play your video, you can hear the music with it. And yes, it's unfortunate that right now the video is, yeah, right now I'm not hearing music at all. I wonder if I lost QSynth. I'm actually going to check. Hey, look at that. QSynth did crash. I think Sora was trying to tell me that before. QSynth crashed. Well, let's fix that. QSynth, come back to me. QSynth is back. And draw my line. Now, did QSynth come back still with the other sound font? Because I want Tim. Yep. So now I should have sound again, with any luck. All right, still going to be glitchy, but at least you can hear some sound. All right, so again, take my word for it. The sound isn't like that if I'm not live streaming, and it won't be like that for you. It's not, you know, you see the limitations I have while I'm streaming here. That, you know, trying to do 4 things at once is complicated and makes things not work right. But it actually sounds really smooth while I'm not live streaming. So that's the basics of what I want to show you. But I want to show you one other thing about the synchronization, which is then, well, how do you take advantage of that in your composing? By the way, I want to check back to the chat, see what other comments I have. Hearing music, but no words. Yeah, so I'm talking here, but there's no sound. If I wanted the video to have sound, I think there's a way to set that up also. If I want to hear the dialogue because I'm talking in this video, but XJDO isn't playing it. I think there's a way in XJDO to talk about how it handles the sound. I think I saw it somewhere, or there's an option somehow to deal with that, but I don't know how to work that, to be honest. So there's another thing you can do. so for now you're putting your music to the movie without hearing the dialogue. So you would kind of have to figure that out on your own, or figure out how to get XJDO to play the sound. Yes, definitely possible to use MuseScore and XJDO without QSynth. Oh, wait a minute, you're saying that, but then where's the sound coming from? That's the question. Because if I try to do it without QSynth, MuseScore, or wait a minute, are you going to say that even if I don't you tell MuseScore to use Jack, that it will still somehow talk to XJDO? That would be really good if that were the case. I had no notion that that would be possible. So Jim, if you think that's possible, let me know in the chat. But I do want to bring a couple people up who know some things. But again, I want to not get sidetracked too much because I want to show this last thing. And that's about actually synchronize. So we talked about how to synchronize MuseScore to the video, but let's talk a little bit about musically what this means. No, use Jack, but use MuseScore Synth. So I don't know how to do that. I don't know if I go to MuseScore and I say edit preferences, when I pick Jack, so this is the other thing I didn't show you today, but I did show Wednesday. You go to edit preferences IO and you select Jack here. That's how MuseScore knows to use Jack. If I switch back to what I usually use, what my default is port audio with ALSA, it's whatever the default is, then MuseScore doesn't use Jack anymore. And as far as I knew, that would mean XJDO wouldn't work. If that's not true, if I don't have to check this Jack button, that would be fabulous. But if I do check the Jack button, MuseScore's internal synth cuts out, and you need to have something else provide the music. So that's as much as I know. So in any case, I will come back to that, and because I want to learn that if that's possible. But I want to show you the musical thing that I want to show you. So what we're going to do is I'm going to switch just to an empty score, and I want to synchronize this so that when I start the score, the point at which the scene changes, right there. When the scene changes there, I want a chord to happen. So what happens is I want to know where that is. I want to know where in the music that is. Well, the first thing I can tell you is by looking at the Jack controller, that happens 7 point something seconds, right? That kind of depended on exactly. So 6 seconds, I'm still here. 6.445 seconds, I'm still there. A second later, I'm there. I don't know if there's a way to scroll this, less than a second at a time, but we're going to say it's about 7 seconds in. So what I want is 7 seconds of nothing music or silence, or just maybe a long sustained chord. And then I want to pop when this happens. So I want 7 seconds of music. So I'm going to tell you how to do some math here. It's not too complicated. Now, in software that's really designed for this sort of stuff, route Jack to the system instead of QSynth. All right, so I'm going to I'm going to have to try that later, Jim. But I've route Jack to system. Yeah, I'll have to learn what that means, frankly, because I actually have no concept. But I'm eager to learn, because if I can avoid getting that extra, if I can get that extra thing out of the picture, I would be very happy. So where was I? Yeah, what I want is 7 seconds. So what I have to think about is what I want, and I'm thinking I want some music that's like maybe at a tempo of around 100 beats a minute. That I'm going to have. So I'm going to put in some, and actually I'm going to make it be flute and bass clarinet, because I don't know, just because. And I'll switch to concert pitch, and I'm going to make it be a tempo of about 100 beats a minute. And so what I want to do now is figure out if I put in, boy, that's not a flute, but If I put in some notes here, I want to find out about where this is. And you can do this just sort of trial and erroring it like I'm at, but then we'll actually do the math to fine tune it. I'm going to start it. Right there. So 7.5 seconds. The problem is I don't know exactly where that left off until I press play to start it again. Right there. So now I know that this is about the 7-second mark. And so if I want, I can make my big chord happen right here. This is the trial and error way of doing it for people who don't like math. All right, so now let's hear this. Yeah? Did you hear the big chord? Maybe it wasn't big enough. So I will make this be a longer note and make the piano start repeating that chord. And I'll put a dynamic marking on it. Dynamic marking of forte. And let's try it one more time. Yeah, so there you go. I kind of trial and errored it to figure out where that is. But you don't have to use trial and error. You can fine tune it from there. If I know that I want exactly 7 seconds, and I believe it's possible, within XJDO, there's controls that can set the sync point so that 0. It gets complicated. There's a lot you can do with this, and I can't show you every feature of XJDO or anything. I'm trying to get you started with some basics here, and it's a lot already, right? But let's say that I knew I've already written the music, and I knew I wanted 3 measures worth, and I wanted to know what tempo would I need to play that 3 measures worth so that it turned out to be 7 seconds. Let's think about this. I'm going to do the math on this. What I have here are 12 beats. Yes, this is 4 beats per measure. I'm going to check the chat again, make sure I'm not losing anything. So yeah, it's 12 beats here. And I want 12 beats to happen in 7 seconds. So I pull out my handy iPhone or your whatever calculator you might have going, and we pull up the calculator, not the camera, but the calculator, and we look up 12 divided by 7 and find out that is 1.7 beats per second. Well, that's all well and good, but we know that tempos are expressed in beats per minute. So I take that and multiply it by 60, and I get 102.8. I'll call it 103. So I happen to guess right and say, okay, I got 3 measures at 100, and it added up to 7 seconds. That was pure random guesswork on my part. Well, what if I decided I only wanted 2 measures? Well, suddenly this is going to be too short. So let me do the math again. Now I have 8 beats, and I want it to be 7 seconds. That's 1.14 beats per second. Multiply that by 60. That's a tempo of 68.5. And I'm rounding here. I'll just call it 69. So now when I play it, these quarter notes are going to be slower, but it's still going to take 7 seconds. Let's hear it. I like it when things work, even when the audio is all glitchy like that. The fact that I was able to get that to time like that, this is the kind of stuff that you need to have. Well, you don't need to have going, but it's going to make, if you're going to do film composing, you need these kind of tools to keep your sanity while doing it so that, you can know that, oh, when I put this chord in here, and then you could add a little rehearsal mark there, Control M, and say this is scene 2. Right, this is scene 1. you can label these scenes so you can remember what happens where. So that's what you do. You count the number of beats you have. You count the number of seconds you want it to cover. Beats divided by seconds is beats per second. Multiplied by 60, that's beats per minute. That tells you what tempo you need that passage to be so the next scene starts at the right time. Yes, you could make each scene a separate file and do it that way, but I'm trying to keep things as simple as possible. So that's what I wanted to show you. And yes, and I know very well that 60 beats a second is 1 beat per minute. 60 beats per minute is 1 beat per second, and 120 is 2 beats per second. And here's a really cool thing. 60, it's also the case that 32 measures is 128 beats. And so if you have a 32 measure song and play it at 122 beats a minute, play it at 120 beats a minute, it comes out about a minute. That's like a nice thing to have in your background. Every 32 bars takes about a minute at that tempo. But yeah, this is a good frame of reference. 60 beats a minute is 1 beat per second. 120 beats per minute is 2 beats per second. So that's the stuff. Armed with those tools, you can make a lot happen. So what I want to do now is I really appreciate having all the comments in the chat, but one of the things that this framework allows me to do is invite people up to join me. And I want to try that. So people who have stuff that you want to share, if you think you can get your mic working, and Jim, I know you've had trouble with your mic during office hours, but that'll be a different thing here, and so it might work differently here. Anyone who's interested in joining this it'll be more like a little Zoom call for those of us who are talking and then other people watching. So it's not like a Zoom where everyone's in, and it's not like YouTube where it's just me talking to everyone. It's somewhere in between that. It can be several of us talking, everyone else watching. So who wants to be invited up to participate, and then you can talk to me and tell me some stuff here. So Peter, to answer your question, so yeah, I'm just by chat, let me know who's ready to be invited up to speak, and you can either be on camera or not, your choice, but I'm happy to start inviting some people up. So Peter, how do you get a recording of that? That's another matter. I would use a video editor for it, frankly. Once you have it looking good live like this using the separate programs, what you would then do is export that audio from MuseScore. File, export, pick MP3. No, don't pick MP3. Pick WAV or pick, a non-lossy compressed file. And so you would export from MuseScore to audio. You've already got your video file, and now you load them both up into a video editor and just line them up. So that's how it's go. Okay, so that's fine, Jim. If you're not ready to speak here, Brian, are you interested in joining? Because I know you had some expertise here. No pressure. It's just like, well, that's one of the things we can do here. So it'd be fun to try it out if someone wants to come and say something. But meanwhile, I'm going to try what Jim's talking about here because I'm really actually quite curious about it. I'm going to try disconnecting. So wait a minute. I'm going to look at what Jim wrote here. What Jim wrote here is check the jack button, but route jack to the system instead of QSynth. So instead of connecting, so I'm looking at it in the graph window as instead of this here. In fact, I'm just going to close QSynth right now to make sure it's not playing. So right now, if I play, I will hear nothing. Right? I hear nothing. And that's not just because of glitchiness. That's because things aren't routed. But what Jim is suggesting is that somehow I can route to the system without QSynth being involved. I wonder if, Jim, if that only works for you because you have some other synthesizer installed as part of your audio system. But I'm going to try that. I'm just going to try to route MuseScore because the audio is already routed there, but can I route MIDI that way? No, it just doesn't route that way. So the audio is already routed to system. And so somehow that just doesn't do it on my system. I think you have to have a system that is configured already so that it can do MIDI playback without having to use QSynth. But I think it's not going to be using MuseScore's playback if so, because I just don't know a way to do that. I don't know if there's some way to route MuseScore to itself. Does that make sense? Does this make any sense at all? By the way, I did notice in Ardor, if you start playing with these sorts of controls, if you do something like this that would actually create feedback, it tells you. It'll say, hey, that's going to create some feedback. So can I uncheck use jack audio? That's a question. Yes, I can uncheck it. Let's come over here, edit preferences, IO, uncheck use jack audio. So I'm using jack MIDI, and that's what allowed it to connect to QSynth. What happens if I uncheck MIDI, I wonder, actually? No, you can't. It's permanently checked. That's interesting. All right. Transport, jack transport, I believe, is the thing that allows MuseScore to do the synchronization aspect. Because if you're not using video, you don't need that transport business. You don't need the synchronization. If you're just trying to use the playback, if you're just connecting to a digital audio workstation, I don't like the word DAW, so I try to avoid saying it, even though digital audio workstation's a mouthful. But eventually I'll just get used to saying DAW. If all I'm doing is connecting to Ardor, I don't really need to have the whole jack. I need jack to connect them, but I don't need the video synchronization aspect of it. I could probably get away with leaving this box unchecked. So, and I think it's unchecked by default. I think I had to check it. So I've done that. I don't know if I need to press the restart, but I'm afraid to. So I'm going to press apply, see if that did anything funny. Not yet. Press play, and now see. So nothing yet, but let's go over to the graph and now try to see. When I did that, MuseScore's audio disappeared from there. Yeah, that's still not a thing. So jack audio is what allowed left and right channels to show here in the graph. So it looks like I do need jack audio in order to do really anything. I guess I'll try hitting that reset button just to see if that changes anything, or restart audio devices. I don't expect that it will. What that did is that every once in a while, like when you start MuseScore, it only has one MIDI channel, but as you start playing things, I notice it starts multiplying MIDI channels here, and I don't know how that happens or why that happens, but restart seems to bring me back to one. I really don't know what the issue is with that, but now will it let me connect this? No, I think that's just not a thing. And if I try to play, I still hear nothing. So yeah, whatever's going on Jim's system, I think must be something about how his audio is configured that's different from how my audio is configured. And the way my audio is configured, that just ain't happening. So I do need jack audio. I will restart audio. I will hit OK. And now I have the left channel and right channel connected, but still no sound until I get QSynth going again. So if I get QSynth running again, I start it up. When I play, I'll still have nothing, I think. But I come back to my graph. Yeah, now there's two MuseScore outputs, and I still don't understand why. Let me just come back to that preferences window. It might be fine. I just don't. I'm still new to this stuff. Restart. Okay. Did that. Yeah, that brought it down to just one again. So yeah, I don't really know what goes on with that. But so they are connected now, and I will once again have sound. Glitchy, but I have sound, right? So that's what I wanted to show you, folks. I don't know. I showed you some other stuff about actually composing music, more of the composing process yesterday, just a little taste. Film composing is a whole big world that I don't know the world. I just know a little bit about it. But now we've at least finally gotten to see how all this synchronization business works. And yes, it does involve using some tools and setting them up. And if things go wrong, you can spend a long time, like I did, trying to figure things out. But sometimes it just works. And when it just works, it's nice. And so I've kind of showed you the things. I'm going to show you one other thing about it that is useful to know. And that is, right now, that point was 7 seconds in. What if I didn't want to write 7 seconds of notes? I just wanted to synchronize starting here, right? This is 7 seconds in. Let me play the video again so you can see it again. Not that it's a brilliant video. I missed the Oscar deadline, I know. So there's that point 7 seconds in. What you can do is there's commands within XJDO to set, what is this? Yeah, I guess there's not a just move forward a second. I don't know why there's no move 1 second at a time, but there's move 1 frame at a time, and it's plus. So what I can do is if I press plus right now, what it's doing is it's moving, and minus, it's backing up 1 video frame at a second. I believe this is 30 frames a second. So I can go back. I'm just, right there. Boom, 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 boom. Oops, I'm pressing equal. I got to press shift. I don't like those shortcuts because minus sign doesn't use shift and plus does. But right, this is the last frame of the previous scene. This is the first frame of the next frame. And if you do this the right way, and I'm not sure if I did or not, that's actually not just that I didn't only move the video right there. I actually set it so that is now the beginning. So that's actually going to be what happens if I start the movie now. It's going to start right there if I start the music now. Oh, actually, it didn't do that. So yeah, there's different ways of setting that up. So that's, I guess, just a way of moving the video, which is great to know. But there was another shortcut, slash, which I think is the shortcut to move back to the beginning. Reset, slash. And then what I can do is start pressing plus to move it a frame at a time. And when I do that, and I'm just holding it down and letting it move, and so I wish there was a better way of doing this so I could just quickly move a second at a time. I can move it a minute at a time or an hour at a time, but not a second at a time. Oh, wait a minute. That is the right place. Wait a minute. That's the right place. What am I doing? Reset. That's the right place because, right, the other one started, I can't remember anything. That's that spot. Yeah, whatever. Those are the things you play with. It is possible to set that to be the start point of the video. That you can definitely do it from the command line, and then when you start the music, it starts right there. So I think I probably had it and didn't realize that I had it, and because it starts off, you can see my Keurig in the background. If you can see my keyboard in the background instead of the Keurig, then I know I've got it right. So now I start it here. Yeah, it's right there on the Keurig. So that's at the beginning. So that's not the right thing. Anyhow, you figure out how to work those commands. You can make it so the start of the music is 7 seconds in or wherever you want it to be. You can definitely work XJDO to do that, but I'm not an XJDO expert. So in any case, I've showed you the things I wanted to show you and hope you got something out of it. And I hope the recording that I just did of this session worked okay. If not, I'll just do a quick separate one where I just show the basics. And those of you who are watching, thanks for being here. And yeah, this system that we're using here, this assuming that I can get all the audio all working as smoothly as I think I can, this is probably what we'll be using. In fact, before we go, I do want to try something. I'm going to shut down Jack again. And I'm going to shut down Jack and see if my audio starts working better. So what I need to do is I'm going to close QSynth, and then in Jack, I need to stop it. You want to stop Jack? Yes. So Jack is now stopped. I can close this. I can close XJDO. And I can come back to MuseScore. I will now hear nothing. I can go back to Preferences. And this time tell it I want port audio. And this process of trying to get my audio back is very glitchy. But it does say it looks like it's going to work. Just to be sure, I'm going to set it up here. That works a little better sometimes. And with any luck, we have audio. We do. Will we have theme music? Yeah, we do. There we go. Hello, everyone. I'm listening. Still. Sounds a little slow, right? I think somehow Jack messed me up and I'll have to reboot. It feels like the tempo's off. Maybe that's right. I don't know. Maybe I'm just hearing things. In any case, this is how things go. So the music master class, I want to move to this format. So that way, if I'm talking about your piece, I can bring you on and you can talk. And it'll be very fun. So this is the system I'm on is Linux running within a Chromebook, which is actually a very lightweight system. This system is actually faster than my Windows system using the same processor, but it is a little more complicated because of Linux running inside Chrome OS. Oh, well, MuseScore, yeah, all the apps that I'm using here are on Linux, but then my browser is Chrome OS. So it's a complicated setup, no doubt, but it actually is a little bit faster than my Windows system. In for most things. So in any case, hope you all enjoyed the stream, and supposedly I'm going to get a recording of this when it's done, and then I'll post that for other people's benefit. And yeah, when I do switch the masterclass over to this, I'll give you a heads up about it, and we'll figure out how to get that going. But thank you everyone for being part of this first real drive of, not even a test drive, but a real drive of this new live stream facility. I'm really looking forward to using it more. Thanks everyone, and see you next time.